Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening. You're listening to the 55 Plus Ontario Winter Games podcast that we are holding in Huntsville, Ontario, February 3rd to the 5th, and in venues across East Perry Sound and South Muskoka. I am very excited today to welcome Michelle Rosenberg, who is an ambassador for the women's hockey portion of our games and a very passionate hockey player herself. And I'm just going to get right into it. Michelle, thank you so much for participating in this podcast and welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you, Scott.
No problem. So I know just a little bit about from chatting with you that you've got a long history in the sport. I want to start there. I want to start
Okay.
as being a coach for girls hockey for many years. Even with us, I'll start with even Huntsville. The Sting program was nothing. It took us forever to get it going. And it went from the first year having to combine two age groups competing against a boys loop on a lower age group just to even get into a competitive league to the point where now Huntsville has grown to having rep teams. Each division now has 2 to 3 teams and it's grown, but it takes people like yourself and others to care enough to make that grow. So that is just in the last so many years. You go further back to where it was even harder. So I'd like to ask you your origins in the sport, some of the challenges you've seen and faced, and where you think the sport is today, and if it's healthy or still needs a lot of improvement.
Yeah, so let me just say that I'm really excited about how much girls and women's hockey is growing and
Mhm.
thriving, and I am very, it was exciting to see women's hockey develop at the international level and now at the professional level. But at my age, at 62, I am thrilled that there are places for us older women to be still playing hockey. I think, when I was younger, I imagined maybe I'd play till I was 20, maybe I'd play till I was 25, and so on. And certainly in my 40s, I was thinking, I don't know how much longer I can keep up with these younger players. And so, thanks to the OSGA, thanks to all the government funding that supports the opportunity for women to continue playing hockey past 55. I actually play with women who are in their 70s. Sometimes we have a little shinny group. So
Amazing.
it's astonishing and really, really inspiring. So yes, I started playing when I was 10 in Toronto. My mother gave up on the idea of me taking gymnastics and dance and could see that hockey was where I wanted to be. So she phoned around, in the pre-internet days, phoned around to all the City of Toronto arenas
Mhm.
until she found somewhere. And I was saying to you when we were chatting, in those days, there were so few girls and women playing that teams weren't divided into, U11 or
Mhm.
midget or bantam or any of those age categories. So I think I started playing when I was 10, but there were girls as young as 8, but there were also young women in their late teens and early 20s. And so we were divided with a buzzer system
Mhm.
so that the younger age groups played against each other, then the middle, then the older, and so on. Um, my parents didn't have a car. And after the first year of driving me or taking me in a taxi to the arenas, which I found kind of embarrassing, I started taking city buses. And I played in the West End of Toronto. And in those days, there were no subways and so on. Early in the morning, I think my games were like at 8 o'clock in the morning or something, because
Mhm.
that was the other thing that you're probably aware of, that way back
Mhm.
girls and women got the worst ice times in the
Oh yeah.
worst arenas.
Mhm.
And there were many times, yeah, when I was playing and we were in these sort of closets that had
Mhm.
been converted into dressing rooms or something. You just had to move the mop out of the way.
Yeah.
And so I rode city buses to get to games and practices and so on. And I got a lot of stares. I got some nasty words by some people who didn't think girls should be playing hockey. But
Nice.
mostly I was just a curiosity,
Mhm.
and people assumed I was carrying my brother's equipment or my boyfriend's equipment
Mhm.
and that sort of thing. Um, and so I've had the good fortune to, probably being in Toronto to get started much earlier than lots of other girls and women have. And I've had a pretty exciting hockey career that has allowed me to play. I played at the University of Toronto and participated in the first ever university nationals when women's hockey became a national sport in 1998. And I played in what was at the time the top women's league. It is not comparable to the PWHL in terms of caliber,
Mhm.
but it was the top women's league at the time.
Amazing.
And I had some amazing coaches. I played with and against women that went on to play on the national team. And so it's been fantastic. But as I've gotten older, I have gotten involved much more at the recreational level and really tried to support women who didn't start playing at a young age or who have only played recreationally to also be able to participate. And I think that's what's so exciting about the OSGA opportunities because we do have competitive women playing that used to play at a very high level, but we
Mhm.
also have lots of other women joining. So, yeah, that's a bit about me.
That's amazing. I think one of the thing that just blew my mind the most of everything you said was that women's hockey was only a national sport in 1998.
At the
That
university, in university
in
hockey, it
university.
was Yeah, it was the first women's world championships outside of university was actually in 1987
Okay.
at North York Centennial Arena. And then the that one didn't get a lot of media attention, but the first big one that everybody remembers where the girls were all wearing white and pink was in Ottawa in 1990. And that was sort of the turning point, and that was the beginning of young girls really seeing that there were going to be opportunities. And I don't know what the numbers are, but I know the OWHA has continued to see this exponential growth in younger girls and women joining hockey because there are so many more possibilities and opportunities for them now.
Well, I've seen that firsthand, but I must say that when you and I talk about this, and I've told you my experience even just from the last 15 years, 16
Yep,
years. And yes, I mean, there's one arena we play in where the girls get dressed in the basement near the
yep.
boilers still today, still.
That's
It's
surprising to me.
Yeah, now it's getting better. That's an old arena that I don't know if they could
Yeah,
possibly make it better, but we're doing
right.
everything we can. But it makes me realize we as a country have missed out on so much because if it was at par with men's hockey and boys hockey way back in the 60s and 70s, we would have had so many more kids doing what they love and
Yep,
so many more parents able to watch their daughters play a sport that is so much fun to watch and then carry it on to the national level. We all know who Haley Wickenheiser is. We all know who Marie-Philippe Poulin is. We know, as a hockey fan, you know that now. Think of the moments we missed out on in the 70s and 80s of Canada-US women's hockey. Think of the stuff
yep,
that didn't happen because we weren't there yet. And I'm just so fortunate that we're there now, but it makes me
yep.
sad of what we missed out on because of stuff you mentioned, people looking at you on a bus thinking you're not playing hockey. Girls don't play
Yep.
hockey, right?
Yep.
And if you
Yep.
and if you watch competitive girls hockey, I can tell you it is just as feisty as boys hockey and men's hockey.
Absolutely.
It
Well, and
is.
I think what I marvel at, I want to just go back and put a plug in for the pre-Haley Wickenheiser
Mhm.
because it was people like Angela James who
Yes,
actually
yes.
paved the way for the Haley Wickenheisers. I
Yeah.
mean, not only did AJ break the racial barrier,
Hmm.
but I'm part of that era. AJ is a year or two younger than I am, so I played with and against her at various times.
Wow.
And it is those, and it's even one sort of decade or generation before. There were the Mern Coveneys, the Hamilton Golden Hawks was
Mhm.
the legendary team that, I mean, those women are now in their 70s.
Mhm.
AJ is about 60 or 61. Those women were actually the pioneers that paved the way. And then the next wave came, and all of that really laid the foundation for the Haley Wickenheisers. And not to take anything away
No.
from her abilities, but I do think because if you said to people my age who was the greatest female hockey player, they wouldn't say Haley Wickenheiser, they would say Angela James because
Yes.
that was our generation.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
and I believe she's in the Hall of Fame, Angela
Yeah,
James.
she is. She
Yeah,
was I think she was the first woman
she
inducted
was.
into the Hall of Fame, and Geraldine Heaney, like
Yep.
that's part of my era and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So
And,
yeah,
and let's be honest, the that era of pioneering women's hockey was a lot harder, because the foundation
absolutely.
was built. These other people have done so much, yes,
Yes,
but the path was laid for them to do it a bit easier, although
absolutely.
still difficult. So yes, we should give credit to those
Yes,
early pioneers of women's hockey,
yes,
and
yes,
we're all today reaping the benefits. I should say
yes.
I've had the pleasure of coaching youth hockey now for many years, and I've had the pleasure of coaching. One year I was coaching both of my kids, and one was in the Sting girls hockey, and one was in the minor hockey for the boys, and
Right.
my experience was altogether different. Altogether
Yes,
different. I found the girls want to listen.
yes.
They wanted to get better. What I love the most is they wanted to be there for their teammates more, and they actually understood that they weren't just playing for themselves. And
Yep,
I would do a practice on a Tuesday with the girls, and I would take that same drill that was so effective with the girls, and I bring it to the boys team,
yep,
and it just didn't work because they weren't listening. They were shooting pucks around. The girls, they don't waste their minutes on the ice.
yep.
They really want to improve. And I don't know if that's been your experience as well.
Well, it is, and I hope that it stays that way because, for us, and again, going back to the Mern Coveney's, the Lois Coles, the,
Mhm.
Hamilton Golden Hawks dynasty, despite their success, they were all there for the love of the game.
Mhm.
And, women were hungry to get better and
Yeah.
hungry to have opportunities. And if it meant being on the ice at 7 o'clock in the morning and 11 o'clock at night and
Mhm.
driving 2 hours to get to the rink that's going to let us play,
Yeah.
we were just so grateful that we wanted to just soak it all up.
Yes.
And I hope that that does continue. It doesn't surprise me. I've coached like what was then senior double A, so
Mhm.
one down from the top level.
Yeah.
And they were also very, very good athletes, but really interested in getting better and
Mhm.
really interested in being successful as a team,
Yes.
not just as individuals, because they weren't getting an NHL contract.
Nope.
There was no scout in the rink. They weren't even getting a university opportunity at that point. So I think that girls are still very hungry to take it in and, get better just for the love of the game as well.
Yeah, and I think people shouldn't think for a second that girls aren't as competitive because if I mean I'm going to the Olympics next year as a reward to myself for getting a bit older, and one of the main reasons is I want to see Crosby and McDavid on the same Olympic team, which will never happen again. But one of the biggest ones is the three of us that are going. The first ticket we bought was to watch Team Canada's women's team play because
Nice.
we've had so many good memories of watching them compete. And if you've
Yep.
seen it, they're like I said earlier, they're just as feisty now. They're a tiny bit more respectful than the men, but they care just as much, and they lay it all on the line for their country,
Absolutely.
or their city, or their
Absolutely.
town, or their province. And so I look at so many sports now that are getting a bit more respect, whether it be the WNBA, the PWHL. People finally realizing, wait a second, like this is just as good.
Yep. Yep. It's a different game. And I think people, one of the challenges early on, and perhaps less so now as more people are aware of and have watched women's hockey on television, even if not live. Um, there was a lot of comparison in the beginning to the men's game. And,
Yeah.
in the 1990 World Championships, there was still full body checking, or
Oh
it
wow.
wasn't body contact, right?
Yeah.
Because there was this idea that it had to somehow be comparable to the men's game. And, we've seen at the NHL All-Star competitions
Mhm.
that there are women that can skate as fast as the men
Oh yeah.
and shoot as accurately
Mhm.
as the men, but and score on goalies in
Yep.
pretty fancy ways.
Mhm.
But it's not the men's game. Our musculature, our physiology
Mhm.
is different.
Yep.
And so I think more and more people are appreciating the skill level of the women's game and not saying, well, it's not as physical as the men's, or it's not as this, or they don't
Yes.
shoot as hard as the men, or that kind of thing. And just watching how many people are in the stands at the
Oh,
PWHL games. It's just incredible.
and the expansion, right? We just got Seattle and
Yes,
Vancouver this year,
yes, yes,
and they're filling the stands. And I mean, if you
yes,
watch those games, you're seeing the best of the best compete. And how could that not be amazing? Sadly, unfortunately, it'll take a while. I think tennis and some other sports are finally at parity for men's and women
yep,
sports, but the money isn't behind it yet.
yep,
But we're seeing in the WNBA how they're fighting for new contracts because the owners are making so much money because those
yes,
athletes are so competitive and
yes,
athletic. And that's coming
yes,
to the PWHL, and it's growing, and finally we have a unified women's league, and I think it's going to keep going. Now,
yep.
back to the game. I think you and I could talk women's hockey for days, because we love it. But to these games, you've competed in past 55 plus games, I believe, right?
I have. So I became aware of the OSGA women's hockey maybe about 10 years ago. I know that it had been running for a few years
Mhm.
before that. I'm not exactly sure how many before. There are a few women around who have been with it since its inception, but I started probably about 10 years ago. And and so I participated in some invitational tournaments,
Mhm.
and then there was actually a provincial, I think the OSGA calls them winter games. We
Yeah.
all hockey players call them the provincials. But
Mhm.
anyway, there was a winter games sort of, I guess what would be now 3 cycles ago in Huntsville. And coming out of that, there were teams qualifying for nationals.
Mhm.
But I think COVID got in the middle of that. And
Yeah.
so I ended up going with a team from District 12, which is sort of Peterborough, Northumberland, City of Kawartha Lakes
Mhm.
area, because that's my home base. Um, we went to nationals in Kamloops, and I think there was one nationals before that out east. I wasn't involved then, and I'm not sure how many teams participated, but this was sort of the beginning of wow. Now that people hear about nationals, now that they become more aware of the opportunities to compete, this is really going to explode. And it
Mhm.
did. After Kamloops, the 55 division grew, the 60 plus division, and we even started. There were women now at the 65 plus level also wanting to put in teams. So I participated again with a different team from still District 12 in provincials in Aurelia
Mhm.
in February of 2024. And my team was fortunate enough to win gold
Amazing.
against our arch rivals at the time, the Mississauga Legends.
Oh, wow.
And so we both qualified for nationals in Quebec. And then I'll put in a plug for Mississauga, I guess, because I'm a good sport. They beat us in an overtime shootout in
Wow.
Quebec at the Nationals. It was a great game, and so I've been through the national cycle twice, and now heading into my third provincials or winter
Yep.
games. And but it's growing so much.
Mhm.
The range of caliber of players joining now is just, really amazing.
I love that. Well, and that's again, that's all started from that foundation we talked about earlier,
Yes.
that these people
Yes.
are still committed and playing. Can I ask you, is the your arch rival Mississauga team going to be coming to Huntsville?
Well, they are, but they're in the 60 plus, but we have a new arch rival team, which is the York Flyers. They're
Okay.
from so that's the team. So I won't go into a lot of detail about it, but there are some very skilled, high level, former, national level players that are
Mhm.
now either coming out of retirement
Yep.
where they haven't even skated in 10 years or more, and women who were playing, but were kind of playing shinny because there wasn't that much to play for.
Yep.
So the York Flyers has a very strong team. that has a number of women who played in that top level that I was
Okay.
talking about
Yeah.
before. And my team
Hmm.
has three or four women that have played at that level or higher as well. And so we are each other's nemesis now. Friendly, we all know
Yes.
each other
Yeah.
because that's the other interesting thing about this is we all know each other.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
we played against each other 30 and 40 years ago.
Yep.
And now we're playing against each other again, but at a little bit of a slower pace, I might add.
Yeah. But I'm willing to bet. I think the message I'd like to get out there to the public that are considering coming to be a spectator, you're going to see best on best,
Absolutely.
and you're going to see a pretty intense rivalry by the sounds of it. And
Yes.
I imagine there's other teams that feel that way. So why wouldn't you come out and see some amazing hockey? I think one of the reasons our Sting program grew so much, Michelle, was we were fortunate enough to have the national, I think U21 championships, women's, maybe U22. But it was the level of hockey from across the country that we got to see. The locals filled the
Yeah.
stands. And I think that's from there, like when the Blue Jays are successful, baseball programs grow,
Yes.
right? When the Raptors are
Yes.
successful, basketball grows.
Yes.
Women's hockey and girls hockey in Huntsville grew so much because we hosted that event. And we now have
Yes.
a competitive adult women's league in Baysville, which is 10 minutes down the road. So
And I just took a team to the charity tournament there in Lee Bruckner's name.
amazing.
Um, Bruckner, yes.
Okay.
But I also want to say I'm old enough that I remember coming to Huntsville to play against the Huntsville
The
Honeybees.
Honeys. Oh, yeah, the Honeybees, and then it
Yes,
became the Honeys.
yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
I am of that era as well.
Well, you should know that the people behind the growth of youth girls hockey were actually those girls. Like the Honeys wanted more for the youth, and I will
Right.
say Carrie Valentin and a bunch of the other adult players in our town decided that was their mission. They were going to make this work, and they're still involved today.
That's
So
great.
yeah,
Really
so we're
great.
we're we're so fortunate. And I guess having competed in the past, you're coming up to Huntsville. As you know, it's February 3rd to the 5th. You're bringing, I assume, 16 to 18 women. Do you have coaches and
Uh,
family?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know, 16 to 18. I think we have 15 skaters
Okay, three
and
full
okay,
lines.
all right, and a goalie. I guess we
Yeah.
have 16.
Okay.
And we have a coach
Mhm.
who was a player herself. She
Yeah.
played fairly high level hockey in her time,
Mhm.
and she was playing with us, but she's stepped back now just because of some nagging injuries,
Mhm.
and so she is coaching us. And we have family members and partners and kids of players
Yeah.
coming to watch. Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
well, we're so lucky. I'm obviously a massively passionate hockey fan. And I say hockey, not men's or women's, it's just hockey. And
Yep.
so I can't wait to watch you guys compete. And I think a message to the public, which I've said earlier, is that you're going to get the benefit of seeing these high level athletes. Doesn't matter what the age is, because it's still best on best. And I want to speak quickly before we have to sign off. On the health benefits and the reason why it's so important for people of any age to participate. You're still competing at a high level at the age of 62. Can you speak about the impacts on physical and mental health of why it's so important to, because our kind of our
Yeah.
whole mantra is live well, be well.
Absolutely. So I've often talked about even as a younger person, I think two things helped me become the person that I am. One was going to summer camp,
Mhm.
and the other was playing hockey. I think, being part of a team and, you learn so much about sort of just without even realizing it, pushing through really hard times and having people around you support you and dealing with, the highs of winning a big championship and losing really
Yep.
disappointingly. And some of those friendships, I mean, one of the women on my team I played with like 30, 40 years ago, and some of those friendships just have carried on and create that really strong social connection.
Mhm.
And of course, we know that social connection is really important for mental well-being.
Yes.
And so for those women that are joining maybe later, they are now also finding this whole kind of group of women that they've never been part of
Mhm.
before. They've had their friends, they've had their other social activities, but it's the dressing room banter before the game and after the game, and it's
Yeah.
the car drives through or the car trips through snowy days to
Yeah.
get to the rink. And it's not just about the on ice experiences, but one year I was injured and I was just so aware of how isolated I
Mhm.
felt. I would go and watch sometimes, but watching was hard.
Yeah.
And so being part of these experiences, and, I have friends and colleagues that are younger than I am that are just marveling at this idea that women could be playing hockey and being this active and,
Mhm.
falling on the ice and,
Yeah.
and carrying on. And so obviously the physical benefits are maybe obvious.
Mhm.
Mind you, we do all have to be a little more careful with our knees and our groins and our shoulders and
Yeah.
all of these things. But I really, the mental health aspect of continuing to stay connected and participate in something that's this joyful for us, because it is about it being joyful. Like,
Yes.
yes, we want to beat the York Flyers
Of
or
course.
whatever. You want to win, but at the end of the day, just having these opportunities, I think we all feel a tremendous amount of gratitude.
Mhm.
And my team socializes all the time outside of hockey. They go to
Yeah.
someone's cottage and they do whatever. And so it really is it's just so important, I think, as we get older and we lose people around us.
Well, yeah, I think the sports teams build community, right? I mean, I've been to a
Absolutely.
couple of tournaments this year with my son's U18 team and a couple of new players this year on our team. So I'm meeting new parents and right away just welcomed into the little group, and it's great. But
Yeah.
what I should say is for young girls, if you happen to be listening, or moms or dads thinking about getting their girls into hockey, like, oh, my daughter can't skate, my daughter's no good, blah, blah, blah. Well, let me tell you something. My experience with boys and girls hockey is the girls program is way more welcoming to beginner players than
Mm,
the boys program. I've seen a new kid come to town who decided to come to skate in the boys loop, and I've seen kids call him Duster. Oh, well, he's just a
mm,
duster, and I'm like, no,
right.
guys,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? He's a cog in the wheel. He's part of the team. And then I've seen the same thing happen on the girls loop where they pull that girl aside and they're like, we're going to help you get a goal. Let's go. I'm
Yeah.
not kidding. It's
Yeah.
just a different
Yeah.
mindset for the way women and girls treat their
Absolutely. And we
mates.
do that too. My team is a strong team, but when we go to charity tournaments or
Mhm.
rec tournaments,
Yeah.
we always take some rec players, and our sole focus is trying to pass them the puck to
Yeah.
score and being really excited when they do.
And you want them to come
Yep.
back if they
Yep. Absolutely.
and the physical side, you talk about, being careful. I'm a little older now but I will say what I've learned is the more you do it, the more you can do it. I've said this in the
Yes.
past, and the carryover using those muscles in skating, as long as you avoid a smash into the boards, it
Yep.
actually helps you with all the other aspects of your life and to stay
Yep.
healthier. So
Yep. Yep.
get on the ice, play in some tournaments. I think we're so fortunate that you're coming to our town and bringing your team. I can't wait to
Thank
watch
you.
the rivalry. I hope you guys have to play each other because I'm going to be at
We're
that
we
game.
we do. We're called the Electric Collective, and
Okay.
we affectionately refer to ourselves as the Sparks
All
when
right.
we're the Sparks. And so we will play each other. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends what the schedule format
Yep.
is, but I'm sure we'll end up playing the York Flyers at least once at some point.
Well, I'll be watching that schedule, and you'll see Leslie Hutchison, our manager, and Mike and the rest of us there because I love high level hockey. I can't thank you enough, Michelle, for taking the
Thank
time
you.
to help us promote this. For those of you who are even thinking about coming to the games, get out to the women's hockey. You're going to love it.